The U.S. Senate has a lot on its plate these days, including Homeland Security and health care reform. And in the thick of all of that is Republican Senator Susan Collins, who joins us today in the arena. Good to see you back in Maine.
Thank you,
with us. Let's talk about health care reform first. I know you're frustrated that you feel Democrats are shutting Republicans out of the discussions at this point, but efforts to reach a compromise haven't worked too well. As the majority party, don't the Democrats feel they have a mandate to pass some sort of reform, and if they have to do it alone, that's what they do? Wouldn't any party do that?
I don't think so, because I don't think that produces the best legislation. What it's produced by having bills written behind closed doors are outrageous special deals for states like Nebraska and Louisiana. And I've found in talking to the people of Maine that while they very much want health care reform, they want a good bill that's going to address the high cost of health care as well as the problem of the uninsured. They don't want to see a bill that is crafted behind closed doors with only limited amendments allowed and with special deals in order to buy the votes of some senators.
Are there some in your party who only want to deny the president a victory? I mean,
sadly, there are, but they're a minority. There are a few Republicans who I will say are not working constructively, but that's not the majority. The majority of senators very much want to see a health care bill and want it to be a bipartisan bill that will address the high cost of health care.
They're calling what Senator Ben Nelson got the Cornhusker kickback, which is a big deal, in fact, because it would pay forever all of Nebraska's extra Medicaid costs, the only state to get that deal. Is there any way to shake that money tree for everybody and make it fair?
It is completely unfair that that's included in the bill. And had there been a vote on whether to give Nebraska alone a special break worth hundreds of millions of dollars, clearly it would have gone down to a roaring defeat. And that's the problem with these secret backroom deals. I hope that the conferees will decide to omit that from the final version of the bill.
We all know political favors are dispensed in the course of doing business. Now, did the president or the Senate leadership offer you anything for your support?
The Senate president, or rather the majority leader, and the administration officials, including the president, asked me what my concerns were about the bill, and I talked about the deep cuts in Medicare, the impact on small business, the affordability problem, the impact on premiums paid by middle-income people who won't qualify for subsidies. But there certainly wasn't any special offer to take care of Maine. I think they know that that's not the way that I do business.
We want you to bring home the bacon. Come on.
Well, I do that, but not as a trade-off
not the pork,
like
no.
that.
Of course, the question is, states like Maine that tend to be more generous in their Medicaid payments will actually end up getting less than states who have not paid as much.
That's right. This bill is really bad news for the state of Maine. We already have a Medicaid program that is extremely generous, so we don't get some of the benefits, some of the incentives that are providing to states that provide fewer benefits. In addition, our Medicare reimbursement rate is already below the national average. So if you have these deep across-the-board cuts and reimbursements for hospitals, home health agencies, and nursing homes, it hurts us disproportionately because we're already at the low end of the scale.
Now, barring a Republican winning the Senate seat in Massachusetts next week, is this a done deal?
I believe that the president is determined to have a bill on his desk, almost any health care bill on his desk. So I believe that there will be an attempt to push a bill through. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in Massachusetts next week, because that could hold the balance.
Let me ask you about it's been almost a year since the federal stimulus package was passed. In general, has it worked? Has it helped this country?
I believe that the stimulus bill has boosted employment, particularly in the construction industry. It's helped Maine in particular with many road projects that have been put on hold because of lack of funding. Communities like Lewiston and Auburn have gotten water treatment grants. That has been helpful to our state. My frustration with the stimulus bill is the money has been very slow in reaching those whom it's supposed to help. Some of the...
I'm going to have to cut you off there. That's all the time we have for the on-air portion of this discussion. Welcome to the online portion of this week's In the Arena discussion. We're talking with Senator Susan Collins, and before the break we were talking about stimulus and that some of it has helped, but you do have some frustrations about the way this money is or isn't being used.
The majority of the money still hasn't been allocated, and that's so frustrating because for a stimulus to be effective, the money has to be invested quickly, and the delays have been very frustrating to see. On the other hand, our economy's still in trouble, so having that money continue to flow through this year will be helpful to states, to localities, and to individuals. Also, people overlook that the stimulus bill also provided more funding for unemployment compensation, for food stamps, for a lot of the safety net programs that are absolutely essential in a recession as deep as this one.
Some are talking about another stimulus this year. Is that something you'd get behind?
Boy, it depends what's in it. I think we have to be very careful about adding to our enormous federal debt. When you look at the administration's projections for deficits over the next 10 years, they are astonishing, almost $1 trillion a year. And we can't afford that, so it depends how it's paid for. And it also depends what's in it. I think our small businesses could use some help, and I think tax relief would be helpful.
I want to switch gears now and talk about Homeland Security, and of course it's high on everybody's agenda. There's an expression, there's a pilot who writes about the airline industry, and he talks about how post 9/11 security measures are what he calls security theater. In a lot of ways they're meant to help us psychologically feel more secure, but in reality don't necessarily stop the bad guys we need to stop. Do you have any sense that the measures we've taken in recent years are legitimate and are helping to keep people secure?
I think we've made enormous strides in improving our security. We tend to forget the successful cases where the work of our intelligence agencies and law enforcement has resulted in thwarting of plots. There were 2 homegrown terrorists last year, the Zazi plot and the Headley plot, that were foiled because of sharing of information. So we have had some successes. Nevertheless, it's very clear that we still have holes in our watch list for terrorists, and that we still aren't doing a good enough job on screening people at airports. Part of the problem is we tend to focus on the way the last attempt was made.
We're fighting the last war.
Exactly.
So how do you avoid that? How do you look ahead and anticipate what the threats are? What do you want to do next?
We have to have better intelligence and apply that intelligence. And at times we have to apply common sense. In the case of the Christmas Day attempted bombing, this terrorist father came to our intelligence agencies. He was a very credible source. He was a former Nigerian government official, a well-respected banker. That's a huge red flag that should not have been missed. I don't understand why the State Department did not immediately revoke the visa that his son held.
Are agencies not working together in the way we'd been promised they would?
Agencies are working together better than ever before, but there are still gaps, there are still failures. Another example of a failure is the Fort Hood massacre, where there was information about Major Hassan communicating with a radical cleric in Yemen that was known to certain intelligence agencies and to the FBI, but not shared with the Army.
Now, if there's a silver lining in this, could it be that we've seen what ordinary citizens can do to keep themselves safe? And it's not just this flight, but there have been others where passengers have taken care of business.
The big change since 9/11/01 is passengers are energized and they are not going to sit in their seats and watch a terrorist attack take place. Now, partially back before 01, the advice to passengers was cooperate with the hijackers, don't take action. We know now that that doesn't work. And it was the bravery of passengers that thwarted the Christmas Day attack, but we shouldn't be relying on the bravery and courage and actions of passengers.
Al-Qaeda has changed clearly, and they're not going after the big score, if you will. They're going after these individual things. I know part of our mission in Afghanistan, a big part of it, is to thwart this sort of thing, this breeding ground for terrorists. Now you have to worry about Yemen. Is that another battlefront we're going to have to fight with troops, or is there another way to approach that?
We have to figure out other ways to approach terrorism, but what this attack reminds us is that the terrorists will continue to seek safe havens in other failed states or failing states like Yemen. When I came back from my visit to Yemen last summer, I predicted that it was going to be the next battleground based on the briefings that we received and what I saw with my own eyes. So we've got to remember that Al-Qaeda is nimble, that it's going to change its tactics, and most of all, that it's able to launch attacks not just from Pakistan or from Afghanistan, but from virtually anywhere, including our own country, where we're seeing an enormous increase in homegrown terrorism.
But when it comes to security, is there a danger that we overreact if we take away too many of people's liberties?
If we take away too many people's liberties, if we're unfair, if we change the way that we live, we're handing Al-Qaeda a victory. And that's why it's important that we pursue security, and it has to be our #1 objective, but that we do so in a way that respects our rights. Otherwise, Al-Qaeda has won.
Does it surprise you that these attackers continue to go after airplanes, which are relatively secure, rather than this sort of shopping mall or sporting event, which, knock on wood, we've not seen?
I'm very surprised at that. My nightmare has always been an attack at a stadium holding 100,000 people, or in a major shopping mall in the middle of America, like the Mall of Americas. I am surprised that airplanes still seem to be the #1 target. But again, I do want to point out that we have seen successes by our intelligence agencies and by law enforcement. And some of those successes have come about because average citizens have reported suspicious behavior. Homeland Security, law enforcement, our intelligence agencies can't be everywhere. We do have to rely on an alert citizenry.
What's your #1 objective in this upcoming Senate session, if there's one thing you really want to focus on?
Well, I'm going to be focusing on a whole variety of issues, but jobs and the economy are #1. Our economy is still hurting greatly, and we've got to look at ways to help get the economy back on track and not saddle future generations with enormous debts. The following up on the terrorism and seeing how we can further strengthen our homeland security is also a very high priority.
And finally, local political question. Your longtime chief of staff announced this week he's running for governor. Are you going to endorse him?
I'm delighted that Steve is running. I think he's a terrific candidate, would be a great governor for our state. I traditionally have not done a formal endorsement in a contested primary, and I'm certainly going to support whoever wins the primary. Will have my wholehearted support, but I obviously am delighted that Steve's running.
But as a veteran of a wide-open Republican primary for governor in 1994, what advice do you give him?
Well, I'm very optimistic about his chances and about his ability to win this primary. My advice to him, and he doesn't really need it, is to work every day to meet as many Mainers as you can and to present your vision for our state in a very positive way. That's what people want to hear. They're tired of the negative politics. They're tired of endless campaigns. And I know that he's going to run a great positive campaign outlining his vision for the people of our state.
Senator Susan Collins, thanks so much for being with us today. We thank all of you for being with us in the arena. We'll see you next time.